Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. I'm always so glad that you're joining us for the afternoon. Thanks for being you and for wanting to tune in, whether you're watching on a live stream or listening over the air. So much appreciated that you are here. And also, I appreciate that I have a great guest host today who's filling in for Dean, and that's one of our super fans. That's Steve Bello. He's joining us all the way from New Jersey. Steve is just like everybody else, a regular guy, maybe doesn't have a lot of connection to agriculture, but he asks really great questions, and he's curious. So, Steve, again, thank you for joining us today on air. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to be of help. Really am. This is amazing.
Good. So don't forget, you have to choose a number between 1 and 5, because the next time we come back from the news, you're going to have to choose your number. Don't say it yet, but that's when we're going to figure out who is going to be a qualifier for us when it comes to the Las Vegas trip that I talked about, being able to fly out and see the Eagles. And I've heard it's a really good show. So even if you're not an Eagles fan, Steve, I think you might still find it pretty cool.
Well, you never know. I mean, I've been surprised before.
Exactly. There you go. Now, speaking of surprises, neither one of us have met our guest we're going to visit with today, and that is Derek Ahl. And I think I said that right. Derek is a Christmas tree farmer. He's in Wisconsin. Derek, how are you today?
Doing great. Thank you both for having me on your program today.
Well, thanks. I'm so glad that you're here to talk. So, Derek, tell us about your operation. Where are you and what's going on in Wisconsin?
So I am in West Central Wisconsin. So we are a Christmas tree wholesaler out of Wisconsin. So we have been busy the whole month sending trees out to different retail lots and stores, so that these awesome Christmas trees that you can see that I have behind me as well can be available for sale at a store near you.
Well, speaking of which, okay, so let's go back just a little bit. Has your farm always been involved in Christmas tree production, or is this something that started out kind of new?
So my sister and I are both third generation farmers. So my grandparents started it way back in 1955. So we're happy to have taken the reins from our parents and are, still delivering Christmas trees even today. It's a fun working with family members and having that opportunity to keep, our legacy, going, for we're coming up on 75 years now already of being in business.
Wow. Okay, so I'm a little curious. Doing this for so long, did you have some native tree plantings that you started with? What's the succession plan basically in the rotation for how you continue to bring up Christmas trees every year?
So it's a very, very long-term crop. So I like to say about a foot a year, and really for the first 2 years, they don't do a whole lot. They're just kind of establishing themselves. So we plant about 200,000 trees per year, and it is about a 10 to 15-year cycle, depending on how big of a tree that you want. But kind of that sweet spot is that 7 to 8 foot size. So it's about 8 to 10 years to get a marketable tree. So from the time that we plant it all the way until the time that it's harvested, it is a very long-term commitment, and they have to be touched multiple times per year. And it is a labor of love, I guess. Is the best way I can put it.
Okay, a huge labor of love is my guess. Are all the trees a dry land, or is there some sort of irrigation that you do to get them to maturity at a certain point in time?
So there are many growers that will use drip irrigation or above ground, just impact irrigation, but we do not irrigate our trees. We find that it's just not necessary. In our climate that we have here, it is well drained, sandier soils, which you would think would need irrigation, but the species that we're growing, white pine, Fraser fir, and balsam, are all pretty well adapted to our climate here. So I think it makes a little bit more robust tree if you don't need to irrigate. And too much water and too little water can lead to issues as well. So nature seems to do a pretty decent job giving the trees what we need.
So I'm always all about the agricultural part of this. Do you have to do weed control between the rows of the trees that you're raising? Do you have like a grazing goats or sheep or anything like that that helps to keep down the grass in between the plant or in between the trees?
So weeds are just like any other crop. Weeds will, especially when they're younger, will outcompete your trees for water, resources, nutrients, just like any other type of row crop. So we mow as well as use some herbicides as well in between the rows, just to keep that pressure down and that scarcity of nutrients and water. Going just to our trees and rather to non-target, plants. But it is a constant battle, trying to uh, make it so these trees can survive. But it's about twice a year that we have to go through and mow and cultivate these fields in order to keep them weed free and a good healthy tree growing.
Speaking of a healthy tree, so do you ever have concerns with disease like a needle cast or anything like that? And you said you have white pine, Fraser, and balsam. So are those trees maybe more disease tolerant or resistant than what you may have in other types of pine trees?
Um, Quite honestly, the three varieties that we grow don't need a whole lot of insecticides or pesticides sprayed on them. There will be some outbreaks that we'll have. Needlecast isn't a huge issue where we're at. Some of the issues that we will find, white pine are susceptible to some tip borers, shoot weevils, I guess is what they'd be called, but tip weevil. But really, they kind of come in pockets, and with scouting you can do a lot without having to do a whole bunch of spraying. So most of any if any chemicals are used, they're mostly used for herbicides rather than insecticides. And these
Hmm.
trees are woody plants that don't have a whole lot of insect predators or bacterial or fungus that are trying to attack it all the time. So in terms
Okay.
of uh, in terms of that, it's not a whole lot of maintenance that's required on that side of things.
Interesting. All right. And that's not only a great stopping point for us for just a moment, but I have a pile of more questions, and I know Steve does as well. So stick with us, Derek. We're going to touch on our bottom of the hour news. We will be back. Folks, you are getting the opportunity to hear questions and answer with Derek Ahl. He is a Christmas tree grower in Wisconsin. And my guest co-host, superfan Steve Bello from New Jersey, is here with me today as well. So come right back after the news. Oh man, there it is. There was the sounder for that Eagles trip. All right, Steve, my illustrious guest host on a number 1 through 5. What number caller should Addison take for the qualifier?
Well,
What do you got?
since I have 3 kids, how about 3?
Perfect. So caller number 3, you're going to be the qualifier for the Eagles trip. Addison's going to take those calls for us in behind the scenes, and then she'll let us know who our qualifier is so we can announce it here in just a little while. Meanwhile, Steve Bello, who is our super fan from New Jersey, he's helping me today by filling in for Dean. And then we have another guest, and that is Derek Ahl of Wisconsin. He's a Christmas tree farmer, and, well, 'tis the season. Steve and I were messaging in the background. So, Derek, Steve has a question for you.
Take it away, Steve.
Oh, where are you? There you are. Do I see you? There you are.
There
he is.
Okay. I usually ask this. Excuse me. I usually ask this because your profession is obviously interesting to me. You said the business has been around 75 years, something like that.
Almost.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So did you have other vocations you were interested in, or was this what you wanted to do for your life?
So I grew up on the farm. Did everything from. We also have a nursery too, so I pulled weeds, mowed trees, you name it. Lots of mowing, lots of tractor work. So a lot of people get scared away by that when they grow up in it. But went off to college and went to school at the University of Minnesota for horticulture and business, and just kept, so I knew I wanted to come back, I guess, but really, keep on with that family legacy. And I really like it. It's super rewarding work. And, I didn't really have a whole lot of questions, but whether I was going to come back or not, my sister took a little while. She went down to Chicago and worked for 10 years down there before she decided to come back. But myself, I kind of knew in my heart of hearts that I always wanted to come back to the farm. So,
Very cool.
yeah.
Steve, go ahead. If you've got another question, you just jump on in.
All righty, I'm going. I'm giving you a little bit of a break there, Bridgette. So, again, this might be an absurd question. Now, my family, we've gotten real trees for about 30 some odd years. Do you see a ratio between people wanting real trees as opposed to wanting fake trees? I know I'm probably not wording this properly, but do you have people saying, "Yeah, we did fake for years, now we want to do real," or do they go back and forth,
So we've done research on that. It's all research, is taking a sample of people, but the common theme that we hear is that anyone who's switched from a fake tree to a real tree, doesn't regret making that switch. I think nothing replaces the smell and scent, and there's a perfectly imperfect experience that happens with a real Christmas tree that you just don't get out of a artificial Christmas tree. From going to pick it out, whether you go to a choose and cut or retail lot, to the experience of bringing it into your home and decorating it. And every tree is different every year, rather than the same thing every year. That, well, we took it out and it's the same thing. Every real Christmas tree has character, that you just can't replicate. That scent that you can't replicate. So, I going back to your original question, I don't think the ratio is changing a whole lot. There'll be those, diehard real tree people, and same thing with artificial tree. But people go back and forth, and I never look down. I'm just happy that anyone has a tree, in their home and is celebrating it. Getting the family together, and with all the other things that go along with the Christmas holidays as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Derek, with those trees that folks are looking to come pick up at their favorite local lot, when does harvest happen for you? How early in advance do you start cutting, netting, and shipping trees to get them to their destination for those shoppers who want to take them home?
Typically, it's about two weeks before. As Christmas tree farmers, we know exactly. We want our consumers to have a great experience. So the last thing that a grower is going to do is cut it too early, or store it in a situation that will lead to a bad experience. So typically it's 2 to 3 weeks before, from harvest to when it's in the retail center. But again, there's a lot of experience and a lot of years that Christmas tree growers have that will make sure that that tree is, as fresh as it was from the day it was cut, to when it was, on that lot. And then, the to make sure that you have a good experience, the most important thing is to put a fresh cut on the butt of the Christmas tree and then keep it watered. If you let it dry out, it will actually put another sap. It'll plug itself with sap on the end again. So if that does happen, you could take it out, put a fresh cut on it again, and then it'll start taking up water again. But that's the biggest thing with a real Christmas tree is water, water, water. I can't stress water enough. That'll keep, it makes the scent better. It makes everything better. So, really, it's easy to have a real tree last, a month or more if you can take care of it the correct way.
That's a good point. It's just the care that really matters so much. And people look for the ideal tree, not Charlie Brown Christmas tree, so to speak. Do you shape the trees at all during their growth stages?
So every summer, from when they're about 3 feet tall, we have to shear them every single year. So it's a huge labor. It's all done by hand. So we go out there with long knives or machetes, and shape the trees. That gives them that nice cone shape that we see with a Christmas tree. Otherwise, if we didn't do that, they would get really kind of long and kind of wild looking. So it is necessary to go out there and touch the tops a little bit, make sure we get that trunk straight. And so that happens every summer from really the June to August time period, just to put those shear them up so that they have that.
Steve, how about over there? Some questions from the East Coast, you might say.
Yes, and that's a nice segue. Have you ever allowed customers to cut their own trees? Because we have a couple miles from my house. I can't remember the name of the farm. It begins with a D. But for a couple of years, we used to cut our own trees, and then we just got tired of it, to be honest. But it was cool while it lasted. Have you ever allowed customers to do that, or you just grow them and ship them to stores?
So we're a wholesaler, so we don't have chews and cuts at our farm here, but that is agritourism is a huge growing segment in our industry. So that's where we're seeing the most growth right now is people want that Instagrammable experience, to go out with their family, get that picture photo op of them cutting down a tree. Extremely popular right now. I'm seeing more and more Christmas tree growers kind of go from wholesale into the choose and cut, where 20 years ago it wasn't maybe as popular, but it is definitely growing in popularity. In the last 10 years, I think really social media, is helping promote that, just because it gives you that Instagrammable experience to post on your page.
Oh, and don't we all love those Instagrammable moments, right, Steve? I'm sure that's what you were looking for, was the Instagrammable moment, right?
Oh, heck yes. Heck yes. My cats would enjoy it too. As soon as we bring the tree in the house,
Right? Okay, so I have a listener question that came in. So Derek, what's the tallest versus the shortest tree that you have cut, harvested, and shipped for someone?
So we did a 22-foot tree this year. I believe it was about as tall as we went. There's some people that just love their big trees, so we'll do anything up to 20 something odd feet. We don't do anything in the 30s. It just usually those will go to like a large park, or what you'd see in the Rockefeller Center or something like that. We don't do those, but and then the shortest that we do, or what I have behind me here, is our 3 to 4 foot. We sell them with a stand. That is growing in popularity. I think a lot of people are using it to have a second or third tree in their house. So my kids each have their own little Christmas tree, which is kind of fun, where they can personalize and decorate it themselves. But that's one of the areas that we're seeing a big movement towards is, yes, you'll have your big Christmas tree, your 7 to 8 or 7 to 10 foot Christmas tree as your main one, but then a lot of people are buying their second, third, or fourth tree for each kid. Kind of a fun deal. So I have a 5 and 3 year old. So each of them have their own trees, and they get to be in charge of the decoration of each of their trees. It's kind of a fun tradition that we've started at our house.
Well, I hope everybody remembers the water. You said water's most important to keep those trees lasting.
Water's most important.
So, Derek, last question for me is you mentioned white pine, Fraser, and balsam trees. Do you see a big preference, a big percentage of the trees that consumers are looking for, the Fraser, or is it very well balanced between those three types?
It's not. I wouldn't say it's balanced. Fraser is definitely in our area, and I won't. Other areas of the country they have different species, but in our area in the Midwest here, it seems like Fraser is kind of the one that most people are looking for. It has really good needle hold, and then the balsam is probably the second most popular, just because of the scent. Balsam has a great scent that is hard to replicate. And outdo. And then if you want kind of that, the reason why we offer the pine is there's a lot of people that like the longer needle trees that kind of give you that old fashioned or retro look that is kind of a fun change up from your traditional fir Christmas tree that you see and that most people have. So I would say it's probably 50% Fraser for us, and then 25% balsam and 25% white pine.
Those are pretty awesome percentages, and again, beautiful trees, all three of those kinds. So, Derek, you're actually part of a Christmas tree association. If you wouldn't mind letting people know what that association is, and then, of course, if they have questions and they're interested in following you somewhere on social media, et cetera, where could they do that?
Well, you can. So I am part of the Real Christmas Tree Board, and it is a lot like the different marketing boards. There's for milk or pork or eggs and things like that. So I'm the chair of that board, and we are always pushing people to try a real tree, experience real tree, and you can find more information on realchristmastreeboard.com, and that will help you find a retailer near you, and care tips, different characteristics of different species. All kinds of fun things for you and your family to look at and help you find a tree.
Derek, thank you so much for joining Steve and I today. We really appreciate you answering all of our questions, and the trees in the background are a really nice touch. Thanks for doing that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bridgette and Steve, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, first of all, before we take a quick moment, I want to make sure to say a congratulations to Jamie. She's from Moorhead, and she was our qualifier for the Eagles trip. So she now goes into the drawing that will take place on January 8th. Again, that will be over at Kingpins. Jamie, you owe Steve one. He picked your number for you. So thanks for doing that, Steve. We will be right back, folks. We'll touch on the weather and headlines next. And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. Here we are in the midst of a succession of days without Dean Wysocki. Looks like I kind of have to do the weather. So here's my best stab at that, folks, and that is it is cold today. I can tell you, even coming from South Dakota, it is brisk. That big Canadian air mass has moved out, and you're looking at a high of below zero, about 3 below today, with maybe a high of 0 tomorrow. Stay warm. These are dangerous wind chills with a 15 to 30 mile an hour wind coming from the northwest. This is going to make your wind chill temperatures 20 below or colder. So dress warm. Make sure you have mittens on the little ones as well as yourself. This is not weather to fool around with. And hopefully it won't last long. We're looking at being back into the 20s on Saturday, maybe even hit 35 on Sunday. What a roller coaster of weather. So my guest host today joining me is Steve Bello. He's our super fan friend from New Jersey. Steve, is it that cold out there? Or should I say you're welcome when it arrives?
Well, I'll do the weather for New Jersey. I'll have to put my DJ voice on. 63 degrees, okay. Actually. It's 63 degrees today. It's been raining for 3 days. We need the rain. But it's very foggy. It was incredibly foggy this morning. And then we're going back down to 38 or something. That's why my voice is the way it is. You know, the weather's been so inconsistent. You know, I sound like a frog, but that's okay.
You and me both, frankly. We're taking it as we can.
Yes, I'm happy you're having.
Well, I think I counted. I'm on day like 19. So whoever gets this cough next, all I can do is say best of luck for you. Anywho. Now, so Steve, you came fully prepared with questions. Any questions you want to throw at me while we're here?
All right. I know you're. I think I can say it's just your favorite brand, Steiger. I think that's what you favor the most.
I do love Steiger tractors. Yes, I talk about them a lot. You're good point.
Well, I hope I'm phrasing this the right way. I mean, there's John Deere and Bobcat. What are other brands that I don't know about?
Okay. All right. So if we think about brand names, the big brands, you would consider John Deere, as you said, Case IH, the red ones, New Holland, typically seen in the livery colors of blue. There's a slightly different green color. That's the Fendt tractors. And you're right about the Steigers. The Steigers were always that iconic, I don't know if I would call it a bright lime color tractor, but now that they are owned by Case IH, Steigers are now red. So they have changed a little bit. Interesting note about Bobcat, which is now part of the Doosan brand out of Europe. Bobcat was always thought to be something useful on the farm and in construction, but particularly useful for dairy farmers at the time that they were choosing its white color scheme. And this is a story direct from some of the folks that were executives at Melrose who were part of the advertising agency decision to make a Bobcat white. And they did it because they were using them in dairy barns. And what do you think of when you think of milk? Like the milkman, white, clean, sanitized. And so the Bobcats, because they were quick and agile, like the animal, got a white color and then the orange wheel hubs to make them stand out. So the Bobcats really came with a neat story as well as a neat color.
Well, that was going to be my next question is what denotes the color of the brand? I mean, my understanding is it stands out in the field. You know, maybe I'm wrong in my assumption, but is there, it's like certain colors mean certain things. Like you said, the white, for the dairy and the milk. I mean, why are Steigers the lime green? Now they're red, as you said, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. But, fix the colors and what's the reasoning?
Well, and I think you're exactly right. The colors always stood out, whether they were in the field, in a dealership slot, the marketplace. People knew what your brand association was. Case as a company has, and I know there's a lot of tractor aficionados out there who are probably going to correct me on this. Case as a company has a number of brands underneath it. That's where the International, the Farmall, a lot of those tractor brands are, and many of them had red in their paint schemes. So I'm just going to make an assumption here that if you had all stand out, and that's their agricultural sector. But when you look at the Case brand for construction, they use a different color. It's more of an orangey color. And I think you're right. A lot of it has to do with that iconic trademark color that makes you stand out as a brand so people know who you are and where you are. You know, Henry Ford once said you can have any color car you want as long as it's black. Well, the car makers decided to do something different, but tractors didn't, I guess.
That's pretty cool, though. That's very cool.
Any other questions, Steve? We've got about a minute left.
How many types of cows are there? Since I mentioned Jersey cow.
Okay, so those are dairy cows that you're talking about there. And then there's a difference between dairy and beef. I'll be honest, I got to do a little homework to find out how many beef breeds there are. In dairy, I think there's 7. And this is going off the top of my head. I may not get these all in, folks, but we think of Holsteins, Guernsey, Jersey, Brown Swiss, and I know there's more. So I'm probably missing about 3 of them. So I got close, but not quite there.
Yeah.
So, Steve Bello, thank you for joining me today to have a little fun,
Thanks
ask
for having
questions. So glad when you can join us. So for everyone else,
I love